A wave of deadly violence in Mexico. Dozens killed, including more than 25 members of the Mexican National Guard, after special forces killed the leader of a powerful drug cartel. The violence extended across multiple Mexican states, with at least one major city virtually on lockdown.
Last night, this escalated fast. Multiple outlets are reporting El Macho is dead. And with hours, the country lights up with retaliation. There's roadblocks, arson, cities are freezing left and right, flights are being disrupted, school closing. And here's the consequence if people don't understand what's happening. You just don't remove a cartel leader. You can trigger actually a chain reaction of successive violence, copycat attacks, and opportunistic strikes from rivals even. I'm Jerome Hill, former police officer and state investigator. And with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill. This is the Hill of Justice. We're not trying to be here to speculate about things. We're here to actually break down what retaliation looks like, because we've seen it in these streets. What it looks like in real time, what it signals, and what the next move usually are thereafter. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that there's just not one flag in today's retaliation pattern. And what that means to me, it tells me that this isn't just about anger. This is about messaging and maneuvering for sure. We're going to go ahead and identify it. And once you see it, you'll never want to look at cartel violence again in the same way. Brother, you were able to see some of the escalatory moments that now all the world news is taking a look at. So Mexican forces killed El Macho. And during that operation, we saw retaliation followed quickly by the cartel and even their rivals. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess my thoughts is I'm amazed just how much power the cartel has. And, I think sometimes we take for granted how fortunate we are here to be in America. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm in a county right now where criminals are pretty much taking over, but not to that extent, not to the extent where there's some major leader and if something happens to him, there's no flights, there's no, everything gets shut down. That's almost unheard of here in America. And, I've got friends with the DEA. They used to tell me some very interesting stories. I had one of them tell me a story when he was over there in Mexico, how a Mexican drug lord got locked up and how a whole army of the cartel came with rifles and everything and demanded him back and got him back. And, and that kind of stuff is unheard of here. Even though, unfortunately, we have a lot of disorder due to the type of leadership we have in a lot of the major cities. But to think that the removal or that happening could cause that type of unrest means that a cartel drug lord, his power rivals almost that of the president of that country.
Yeah, I mean, we see this in narcotics investigations all the time, just on a much, much, much smaller scale. So people ask, why the retaliation? Why burning the cars? Why block the roads? What about burning the businesses? And I'm here to tell you that because the retaliation is not only about violence, because a lot of people want to think about that. It's control of movement and perception. And if you're blocking the highways, it does three things, right? It chokes all types of responsive time. We know that. It paralyzes commerce. So you bring a country to its knees and you force the state to do what else? They have to act like the cartel. They have to go ahead and bring the violence to them. And this is what causes all types of chaos. And these are the type of reports that we're starting to see. And this is how, and I spoke to you earlier about this. Generally, when we take out a cartel leader, we're looking at generally in America, 14 days later, 21 days later, we're looking at bodies starting to drop in American cities. We're starting to look at, and people might ask why, and how do I know this? Well, what generally happens is when you take out a leader such as that, all you do and what those organization does they start pushing and flooding all of their drugs into the supply chain system. And it starts choking up those arteries, and of course, America is the biggest consumer of drugs. It starts going into all these major cities. People consume it like crazy. And guess what? It starts getting tainted. People start losing their lives. And then there's much more out there. Somebody wants a piece of the pie. And then you start seeing rivals in the United States start going at each other. So this is what generally happens when a cartel leader goes down in a heap and you have all these rivals starting to come in after one another.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen this time, though. I mean, I'm not saying that it won't. What's interesting is we're seeing a will to fight drugs like we've never seen before. And, that's a whole nother debate you and I can get into and sure we'll have. But we've never had the federal government this fierce where they're blowing ships up to make sure they don't bring drugs. I mean, this president is probably going to act in a way that we've never seen a president done before if they bring that stuff over here. And
Well, they have.
yeah, I don't know if they're gonna, I don't know if they'll ever, at least not while he's president, ever have the type of presence and power they had here before, because he made it pretty much clear with how he handled Venezuela that he's not going to have that. So it's going to be interesting to watch this. I guess what bothers me.
Here I got to put some pushback at.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Push.
He went back on Venezuela. Venezuela is thousands and thousands of miles away. We've got Arizona in the crosshairs. We got Mexico in the crosshairs. We have Texas in the crosshairs. And when I say they are in the crosshairs, they are in the crosshairs. I do not see the American government right now running roughshod over Mexico like they did Venezuela and taking out banana boats in the waters.
I see it because I think it's easier because it's right here at the border. There's already this fight at the border to stop the influx. And he's proven that he will not hesitate to use the muscle to stop these folks. So it's not, this is a different era we're in now. He's not going to he hasn't shown any weakness and he's not going to show any weakness. So they're going to have to be very careful how they decide to bring that stuff over here. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, this president is the first we've ever seen to take the fight of crime to the streets. Whether you agree with it or not, he did it. What he did in D.C., what he did in Memphis, we can get into all of that. It was a constitution, all kind of stuff. He's the only president strong enough to take the fight to the streets and say, I'm taking the streets back. And what he did there, if they start some craziness like this, he's going to act. He's not going to stand down. He's never shown any weakness with that. So they're not dealing with the type of weakness they were dealing with before. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because it's not going to play out like it would have played before.
I look at these red flags in terms of what is especially poignant to me when the drug cartel goes about retaliating, especially this swiftly. I mean, this is really, really fast. It just shows me how organized they are, and it just signals to me how they just go about from the leadership all the way down what it means as an operational machine in a country that has been, ruled part and parcel by the drug lords, without a doubt.
Even more so how strong or organized they are. I look at it the opposite way, how weak and disorganized the government had to be to even let them become that powerful. I used to always say when I was sheriff, you've got to make up your mind when you're the head of law enforcement or the head of anything, who's going to run. If you run a jail, you're either going to run a jail, the inmates going to run a jail. Mm-hmm. If you are in charge of the safety and security of the streets, you're either going to run the streets or the criminals are going to run the street. And I used to always make it clear. That's why there was a sheriff's office flag at the front of the county. That's why there were signs and entrances warning criminals. In Clayton County, there's not going to be any John Gotti. There's not going to be any Pablo Escobar. it's going to be the Clayton County Sheriff's Office. If you don't make that clear and you don't take command and control, then there's going to be someone, whatever, be it an Al Capone, be it a Frank Lucas, and they will take control and they will run things. And with that, when that's allowed, it can only be two reasons. Either the head of law enforcement is weak or they're corrupt too, and they're on the take. Those are the only two ways that can happen. So while we can sit here and admire the strength and the organization of the cartel, which we can't take that from them, you also got to wonder about the weakness and the corruption of the government to even allow them to become that powerful. Because at the end of the day, the cartel has an army, but you got an army too. And you're either going to strike or you're not.
Well, I don't know if the Mexican government 80% of their weaponry comes from the United States, and we're semi-automatics. We're talking about automatics. The only way you get an automatic is if you're in the military or police. Can you imagine a cartel? Most of them, 80% have this type of firepower. You think the Mexican government has that type of firepower?
No, but they got the ability to get it. But you got to have more than the ability to get it. You got to have the will to fight. Like I said, everything rises and falls on leadership. If the leader is weak, the organization is weak or the country is weak. If the leader is strong, then the organization is strong. And the leader has to have the will to pull the trigger, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And I think now they're showing the will to do it now. We got to give them credit. They're fighting back now, which is good. And someone at this is decide, okay, we're going to run this, not the cartel. And we applaud them for that. And that's why I'm saying it's going to be very, very interesting because the leader of this country, we know has the will to pull the trigger, and he will.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing it for years now. Case in point, El Chapo a few years back. So we've been doing this and having joint operations with the Mexican government. But we got to talk about
We have, but not like what's been going on now. It's an iron fist out there now.
I think that I think that
It's an iron fist there now. Whether you like that fist or not, it's an iron fist.
yeah, and sometimes as I told my son all the time, just because you got a hammer doesn't mean you hit every nail out there. Sometimes you got to be surgical about what you do, and not so much with tremendous blunt force. But it gets to this point that we have to get to is that most people miss the succession part of this because the violence that we're starting to see is also what I call as a job interview for the next boss to come in there because whoever becomes the most ruthless at this point becomes the next drug cartel. And that's what happens when we remove that. So
I'm glad you brought that up. So there's two strategies, okay, and I love both games. You got chess,
Mhm.
and then you got a game called Go. Go is an ancient Asian war game, and chess. The objective is to capture the king. So we're fighting drugs. Technically, okay, we want to capture the head of the cartel. Go is very interesting. Go is not concerned with capturing the king or the kingpin. Go is concerned with controlling the territory. So that's what we did in Clayton County, and that's what I hope that the nations, as they fight drugs, will consider doing as well too. Well, first of all, I didn't even allow a kingpin in Clayton County, but what we did was control the territory. So instead of drug dealers and criminals having road checks, we had road checks. We had road checks where we knew there were drugs. So there was no way to get to the drugs or get from the drugs without going through the road check. Well, they had to leave. Sometimes we would just, if for lack of a better term, like we say when we play chess, we would check a drug house by putting a car in front of that drug house with the light flashing and everything. Well, now they can't sell drugs. Just that alone caused the drugs to move to another jurisdiction. They couldn't sell the drugs. So, instead of going in and shooting and killing the owner of McDonald's, if you block the drive-through window, he's not going to make any money anyway. So he's going to ultimately have to shut down. So I believe that the best way, and I don't believe we've proven in Clayton County that the best way to fight drugs is to control the territory. Because when you take out one cartel member, there's another person waiting to take his place. And then it becomes a fighter who's going to become the head. Just like on the streets, if there's a certain drug dealer that controls this particular block, you can sit in a prison for 30 years. The next guy's going to come take his place. The best thing to do is control the territory where nobody can sell drugs and they have to all go away anyway. And it saves us time and money because we don't have to feed somebody for 30 years.
Yeah, but unlike these American territories, we're talking about multiple commanders. As there's many cartels in Mexico, and they have their own particular territories, right? One is just as strong as the other, by and large.
Right.
So
But if you control the access and ingress and make it impossible for them to transport the drugs, that's the problem solved. That's more effective than going after the kingpin.
well,
That's it's a military strategy that's been proven to work. When they did a historical background of all the wars where one general used a chess strategy and the other general used a ghost strategy, there's never been a general that used a chess strategy against a general that used a ghost strategy and defeated him.
but that's assuming that, I mean, we're talking about a drug cartel that's much more prolific than all the manpower that you can even muster up in Mexico. I mean, they don't have enough personnel to even deal with that.
It's not a matter how much manpower you have. You're talking about controlling a territory. I mean, you could put it's no different on a chessboard. If you put a bishop in a corner, you've cut off half the board. It's not like you need the whole army to do that. You just got to strategically place things where you can't move the flow of drugs.
I agree with you, but I think that's still an oversimplification of
But it
what
is
we're
simple.
dealing with.
Yeah, it is simple. People make things complicated. It's simple. That's how I got the drugs out of Clayton County. If there was an area that we can control by putting people here and there, we didn't have enough people to get in front of every drug house. Sometimes there were neighborhoods that had 3 ways to get in and get out. Well, guess what? All we need is somebody at those 3 entrances. And now nobody can't get in there and get out. It's very simple. We overcomplicate things.
Well, the only pushback is that you're not dealing with these sicarios. These sicarios are much, much different. And, America likes to go ahead and think they got some hardcore drug dealers and so on and so forth. You don't. Don't try it. You don't. You know, you ever born into poverty like this, and those guys will fight to the very end, and they do. We've seen
And you got to find soldiers that will make you got to create your Navy SEALs. You got to
that's the
create your
point.
Navy SEAls.
They don't have that, you know?
No, they got it because just like those guys grew up poor, you got other guys that grew up poor as well too. And
Yeah, but that gets
th-
back to your point about, corruption. You know, they have infiltrated the government in that way. So you still got a problem on that end.
I agree there's a problem with the corruption, but there are still some people out there that are incorruptible.
Yeah.
Now, we know no good deed goes unpunished.
Sure. Sure.
And, ask me how I know.
Right.
But there's still people out there that are incorruptible and that will take on that fight. For every Al Capone, there's an Elliot Ness.
There is. But
You just gotta, now, you're right. They're out
yeah.
there. They're few and in between, but they're out there. And
And
that's
you got
what,
to give them a lot of latitude too
yeah.
to do what you got to do. And that gets us to the next phase that will likely shift from the broad disruptions of what you're seeing right now in Mexico. I saw footage of Americans and foreigners trying to get the heck out of Mexico so fast. But you'll start seeing a targeted enforcement, a little bit what you're talking about, and selective strikes. And I think that's how the Mexican government has been able to somewhat try to control the narrative on that end of it. I've always felt that they had the losing end of it. But if they're more committed, as you were talking about,
They are.
we'll see more stuff like that.
Just the
And
fact that they made this move
yeah,
says a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
It
And,
says a lot.
and when you do something like that, and especially when you're dealing with leadership decapitations like this, you have to know what some of these outcomes are going to be like and what you're going to have to weather. And certainly the Mexican government, not to say that they don't know. I believe they do know. They have had their leaders threatened, killed, and made an example of. But we're talking about markets and territories and how you need to contest them. A little bit of what you were talking about.
Yeah, they listen. they're fighting a ruthless group of folks, and they're gonna have to be just as ruthless to win. I mean, this is not, listen, this ain't a time where community policing can work. It doesn't work here in America. I mean, there's no way to throw a block party and start crying on TV or whatever and solve this problem. They're gonna have to double down and keep doing what they can do until they can crush it.
Yeah.
It can be crushed. It has been crushed. We saw it happen in Colombia. If it can happen in Colombia with Pablo Escobar, it can happen in Mexico. Somebody just has to have the will to fight and the willingness to pull the trigger, for lack of a better term.
That gets back to Pablo Escobar and his sicarios and the help of two governments. Of course, the Colombian government who made the commitment, and then the U.S. government to go ahead and make the commitment. And also number three, that a lot of people do not talk about, his rivals wanted him gone, and they helped out in this too. So
Out.
that is the ugliest game in narcotics that we have to deal with, is that we have to work with individuals that we know are playing both sides of the fence. And this is one of the things that you have to go ahead and say, hey, guess what? They make strange bedfellows at times.
Well, it's not just
It's not.
narcotics. It's politics. How do you think Haiti won their freedom?
Yeah.
The leader of Haiti had I can't remember. I know it was the France and Spain. He had to team up with one to fight the other. Then he had to fight the other in order for them to have their freedom. So I mean, that's nothing new. It's not
Right.
just in the world of narcotics,
Right.
but it's a step in a direction that needs to happen. Again, there shouldn't be any government. Like I said, if anytime you go to a city, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, there was a time when we knew Al Capone ran Chicago. There's a time we knew that John Gotti ran New York. And we can go on and on. But anytime the bad guys run the city and the mayor or the police chief or the sheriff don't, that's not a good look.
Sure.
That says they're either weak or they're a part of the problem.
Right.
And if they're a part of the problem, that means that they're corrupt. But again, that there has to be that type of leadership. Either you're going to run it if you're the sheriff or the chief, or the drug lords are going to run it. And it has to be clear that they can't run it.
And that's what people don't get, and we need to impress upon them this. This isn't a movie ending when you take out a drug pen like this. It's just a new chapter. Please understand that. We're probably at chapter 18,000 at this point. But, this is what happens and civilians get caught in the middle of this 100%.
And that's why it's so important, Jerome, that they switch to the strategy of controlling the territory. Because like I say, you take out one drug kingpin, another one's going to take his place, another one. All of this is musical chairs. You cut off the supply. You cut off their ability to whatever.
Talking about the supply, it's the United States. We're the dumbasses that keep on consuming all this shit.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but you're talking about drug addicts. Okay. We've got to cut off their ability to even get it there. The only effective way to deal with gun violence is you have to stop the flow of guns to the hands of criminals. The only effective way to deal with drug trafficking is to stop the supply of drugs to the addicts from the drug dealers. You do that, both of them have a problem. The drug dealers can't make any more money, so they got to go somewhere else or find something else to do. And the drug addict can't get their drugs anymore. So now they're either going to go cold turkey or have to find another way. That's the only tried and proven way to stop drugs. I mean, we can lock up all the kingpins we want. I've been there with them. Some of them serving 30-day sentences. And here's what's so funny about it. When people tell you there's more drugs in the jail than on the streets, they're not lying. I witnessed it. I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. And, it makes me wonder. I actually did a post a day about it because you came to the Clayton County Jail now, Sheriff. There was no drugs in the jail, and it wasn't hard to stop it. And when you see drugs in the jail, you got to wonder, is it deliberate indifference or are they complicit with the drugs?
Mm-hmm.
And it's either one or the other. But to take a kingpin and put him in a jail where there's plenty of drugs there and you got kingpins in the jail that are dealing drugs.
Sure.
Right. Okay. It's simple.
So do what Duarte did.
Say it again.
Do what Duarte did in the Philippines and just kill him.
I mean, I think that's a bit much. All you do is stop the flow of drugs. It's like how I stopped the flow of drugs at the jail. It wasn't that simple. I just cut off all the entrances, and there's only one way to get in the jail and one way to get out. There's cameras filming. There's drug dogs. Everyone has to be searched. If you go back outside and search and smoke for 5 minutes, you get. It wasn't rocket science. It wasn't like, hey, I found some. You control the territory. And just like that works, I can stop drugs from coming in any jail. That's not that hard. But you can't have 6 or 7 entrances where people come in and they don't get checked. You can't just have an open airspace where drones could come or whatever. There's ways to block that. It's not rocket science. Well, it's the same thing on the streets. If you give me an area that's drug infested, I can stop their ability to sell drugs in 48 hours. And everything is frozen. Now what? It's not that hard.
Right. And then you'll get accused of being the drug cartel yourself.
Well,
So
they've already done that. Exactly. I mean, yeah, I hear that all the time now. Right.
And
People are gonna make up stories no matter what. I mean, I think you and I both from that. I'm the ex-drug lord. I'm a hitman, and whatever. You hear all kind of stuff like that. People gossip and make up stuff. They don't have anything else better to do.
Sure. And of course, when we talk about decapitation, we're talking about all types of what it causes. We're talking about fragmentation. We're talking about competition. We're talking about all those other things. And we know that we're gonna have to work out with counterinsurgencies, counterterrorism, in those contexts to stop those type of things. And that's what you're talking about now. And
But
go ahead.
you're right, brother. Keep going.
I just think that with that type of command that is out there, I don't want anybody to have the illusion that this is going to be a 2-year war, a 3-year war, or a 4-year war, or a 5-year war. And Mexico needs our tourism a lot. We do. Certainly in Baltimore, we protected the ports of Baltimore. In Pittsburgh, we made sure that, hey, guess what? We want to make sure that downtown, in our historical areas, were free of nonsense. They're going to have to start somewhere, and the best place to start will probably be in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. But I hope we see that strategy employed in controlling the territory. I
Yeah.
can tell you 1,000 Southern Springs apartment was probably the most drug infested apartment complex. They had taken over buildings that were abandoned. There were at least 10 to 12 guys standing when you drive in. But guess what? There was only one way to get in Southern Springs by car. There might have been several ways to get in by foot, but only one way by car.
Mhm.
And it was shut down overnight. I literally drove in there. Hey, this is over. 12 o'clock tonight, be gone. Just that simple. And then one of them actually asked me, he said, well, where are we going to go? And I said, I don't know. I said, there's 159 counties in Georgia. You're going to have to pick one of the other 158, I guess. And it was shut down just like that. We took control of that interest and it was over. Of course, all those guys left that night anyway, but I mean, it's not hard. We're complicating stuff.
We
We didn't have to shoot anybody. We didn't have to send anyone to prison. We just control the territory.
Well, these people you're gonna have to shoot, I have no doubt. And then you got them with their technology, with the drones and so on and so forth. So you're gonna have to have informational ops. You're gonna have to definitely have internal cleansing. Basically, you're gonna have you guys start building up an army of traitors, if you will, and people who are opportunistic for turf wars. This is
Yeah,
it's
I'm not
gonna be
saying
really
that that it can't be done 100%. That it can be done 100% without gunfire. But you're talking about a different circumstance here. When you control the territory, they're going to have to bring the gunfire to you. I mean, if you block off entrances or whatever, and they can't get the drugs through, that's totally different than kicking in a door and shooting out or whatever like that. You controlling the territory. It's going to be. I'm not saying there won't be violence, but it's going to be less violent. You
You
just
don't have to worry
shutting it
about
off.
that because they're gonna go ahead and do the checkpoints. You see, with the cartel, they take the fight to you. They're not worried about you taking the fight to them because they're prepared for that.
I agree, but they're gonna have to take the fight to them. We had that situation happen in Atlanta. We actually, during the riots, had some thugs started doing a road check, and we could do a whole show on that because I called the police chief who wasn't aware of it and told him, "Hey, you need to stop that." And then he was told to stand down by City Hall. And guess what? They started shooting and ended up killing an 8-year-old girl. Had they took the SWAT team and took control of that, exactly, and
I
that
remember that. Yeah.
exactly. So had they took control of that situation, the city hall was what? Afraid of, well, we might get in a shootout if we stopped it. Well, guess what? A shootout happened anyway, and an 8-year-old girl got killed. Okay. The Mexican government's gonna have to do the same thing. They need to be the only people doing road checks. And the only way for them to take control of those road checks is they're gonna have to take some type of military SWAT team to go there and confront them, and then they assume command of that road check. That's what's gonna have to happen. They can't just let them. They let them stay there, then it's gonna be the same thing that happened in Atlanta where the mayor and city council is like, "We'll just talk to him," and now you got an 8-year-old girl dead. So there you go.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and land this plane. Macho is being reported dead. We already know that. And of course, this isn't the end of the Jalisco gang, cartel here. So it's just what I like to call a reshuffle of things. So, as we take a look at this, the retaliation we're seeing isn't just rage. We know it's negotiation. Hey, we're bigger than you. We're better than you. And this is the succession that we want. And the territory matters. And we're going to go ahead and do it with gunfire. So here's the question I want you to sit with and everyone else, because many of you are many detectives and investigators who watch the show. Is this retaliation meant to punish the state? Or is this the warring rivals that the throne is already taken? So that's where we're left with at this point in time. There's going to be more to this, brother. I have no doubts about this. The show is growing 100% by leaps and bounds. We appreciate everybody who's been subscribing, liking, and certainly hit your notification buttons. Many of you are watching, but you're not hitting your notification buttons for our next episode. So without further ado, brother, great show again, and we'll talk later.
All right.
All right, later.